few months ago, I was sitting at a coffee shop in Ohio with an old school friend. We were just talking about work, money, life struggles, and then he suddenly asked me something that caught me completely off guard. He said, "Do you believe in curses?" I laughed at first, but he was dead serious. He said when life pushes you into a corner, when nothing makes sense, people will try anything: psychics, healers, preachers, anyone who claims they can fix the impossible. And then, he told me a story. A story about his own family. A story he swore had been kept secret for nearly 10 years. His youngest sister had just gotten married. Unlike the big family weddings, this one was rushed, quiet, almost hidden. No invitations, no celebration, just a private ceremony. She had fallen in love with a guy who came from a complicated family. His mother and sister never liked her, never wanted the marriage. Everyone knew it. On the day of her engagement, his mother brought a gift. A white dress. Now, here's the strange part: his sister hated white. Everyone knew she never wore it. But she smiled, forced herself, and put it on. That same evening, the groom's mother and sister brought a small cake. They insisted she take a few bites, and then they packed the rest of it up and took it home with them. Nobody else touched it. It seemed odd, but no one said anything. A few days later, everything started to unravel. She was in college at the time, and one day her friends brought her home early, completely unconscious. Doctors ran tests, hours passed, but they couldn't figure out what was wrong. She would wake up only to laugh in a deep, chilling voice that didn't sound like her. She cursed at her parents, screamed things no daughter would ever say. That night, while leaving the hospital, something terrifying happened. At the front entrance stood an old security guard. He was softly humming a church hymn. The moment his sister heard it, she snapped awake, her face twisting in rage. She screamed at the guard, spitting curses, her voice so deep it rattled their bones. The guard quietly told the family, "Take her home. Get her spiritual help. This isn't medical." That was only the beginning. At home, things got violent. They had to chain her to the bed because at night she would thrash, scream, and even leap into the air like something was trying to rip her out of the room. One night, her older brother made the mistake of untying her, feeling guilty. She grabbed his hand with inhuman strength, twisted his fingers back until two of them snapped, and threw him across the room as if he were weightless. Her voice kept changing, sometimes a man's growl, sometimes a woman's whisper. She promised things, terrible things. "Bring me raw meat, and I'll give you what you've been wishing for. The girl you loved will come back. Just let me out. Just feed me." Eventually, they called in a pastor. He prayed, read verses from the Bible, sprinkled holy water. The house shook with screams that didn't belong to her. At one point, she vomited blood and raw chunks of meat she hadn't even eaten. The pastor ordered them to never let her look in a mirror, never remove the chains. But his presence only made things worse. That night, his pregnant wife miscarried after claiming a shadow had passed straight through her in the kitchen. Terrified, the pastor backed out. He said, "This thing is too dangerous. Find someone else. I can't risk my family." The worst night came when they tried a ritual with a goat, something one of their relatives suggested, desperate for a solution. They brought the animal home, planning to sacrifice it at midnight near the cemetery gates. But before they could, they found it dead. Its neck twisted. Something was crouched on top of it. A pale, grotesque creature, almost human, almost not, staring at them with hollow eyes. By the time they blinked, it was gone. For months, the sister would swing between normal and horrifying. Some days she cried, begging, "What's happening to me?" Other days she'd laugh in a voice that wasn't hers and demand raw organs to eat. Even now, years later, her family swears certain things never left her. She developed cravings for animal hearts, raw food, things no normal person would eat. And every holiday, especially around slaughter or meat, her behavior would shift. She'd demand the heart, the blood, the parts no one else would touch. The doctors said she was fine. The neighbors thought it was madness. But her family knows. Something moved into her that day. And it never truly left. Now moving to the next story. Not every possession starts with cursed food or gifts. Sometimes it comes from sleeping in the wrong place or opening a door that was never meant to be opened. When I was younger, my family rented a big old house in upstate New York. It had 3 floors, but only 2 were meant to be used. The 3rd floor was sealed off, unfinished, dusty, filled with rotting wood beams. My father always said, "Don't go up there." That floor was never meant to be lived in. But curiosity has a way of pulling you where you shouldn't go. It started with dreams. At night, I'd see myself climbing the narrow staircase to the 3rd floor. I'd hear whispers, soft at first, then louder, echoing like voices trapped in the walls. In the dream, I always reached a locked door. Sometimes it rattled, like something on the other side wanted out. Sometimes it opened a crack, just enough for a shadow to slip through. When I woke up, I'd swear I still heard footsteps overhead, even though that floor was supposed to be empty. Things got worse during the summer. I stayed home for a religious retreat. I was supposed to spend a week in prayer and isolation, but instead, I spent every night battling sleep. The first night, I woke up gasping. My chest was heavy, like someone was sitting on it. My arms wouldn't move. My mouth wouldn't open. And in the corner of the room, a shape leaned against the wall. Tall. Thin. Watching. I wanted to scream, but the sound died in my throat. When I finally broke free, the shadow was gone, but the sound of footsteps above me was not. By the 3rd night, I wasn't sleeping at all. My body felt drained, my skin cold to the touch. That's when my cousin visited and stayed over. He laughed when I told him the house was haunted. To prove me wrong, he climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor. I begged him not to. But before I could stop him, he kicked the door open. Inside was nothing but dust, cobwebs, and a single wooden chair sitting in the middle of the room. He smoked and sat down. That's when the temperature dropped. We both heard it, a whisper, circling the room, though no one else was there. My cousin shot up from the chair and bolted down the stairs, pale as death. He never joked about that house again. But the worst moment happened years later, when we had already moved. I was living in Philadelphia, in a quiet apartment. For the first time in months, I thought I had escaped it. But one night, I woke to the same heavy pressure on my chest. The same paralysis. And when I opened my eyes, I saw the exact same 3rd floor door from my childhood house. It was right there, standing in the corner of my bedroom. And something was knocking from the other side. I never stayed in that apartment again. And to this day, I don't know if the 3rd floor was ever haunted, or if I just carried something out of that house with me. But every now and then, when I wake up in the middle of the night, I hear it again. Knocking. Always 3 times. Always from the dark corner of my room. Now moving to the next story. This one is connected to my mother's house and the strange, terrifying incidents that happened there. Years ago, my parents purchased a house far from the main highway. At that time, the area was not developed, only a few rows of identical barracks-like houses, built by a single company. The place was surrounded by greenery, tall grass, dense trees, and thorny bushes. For a long time, the house remained locked, abandoned, and silent. When my family finally decided to move in, they first set workers to clean the place. It was during that cleaning that my little sister was bitten by a scorpion. The pain was so unbearable that she screamed and cried the whole way to the hospital, which was at least 30 minutes away. She needed multiple injections before she stabilized. From that moment on, the thought of scorpions lurking in the house planted a deep fear in everyone's hearts. When my parents and siblings eventually settled there, I often visited because I was married but still close to my family. My daughter was very young at the time, just a toddler. Since the house was newly occupied, the furniture was minimal. The huge drawing room had only 2 sofas, one of which my mother used as a bed at night. Whenever we visited, all of us would spread carpets, put down pillows, and spend the entire night talking, laughing, and sharing stories. But slowly, strange things began to happen. One night, after everyone had been scolded by my father to go to sleep, the room grew quiet. Minutes later, my youngest sister suddenly screamed in terror. When the lights were switched on, she was trembling, her eyes wide with fear. At first, we thought she had been frightened by the thought of another scorpion. But when she caught her breath, she explained something far worse. She said she had been drifting into sleep when she felt someone massaging her head gently, the way our older sister sometimes did to help her rest. She assumed it was her until the pressure grew stronger, painfully so. Long, sharp nails dug into her scalp, scraping her skin. Annoyed, she turned to tell her sister to stop, but her sister was lying far away, fast asleep. When she reached up with her own hand to check, she touched something not human. A hand. A hand with no skin. A hand made of bones. She jerked away and screamed so loud that everyone woke up. But no one believed her. We laughed it off, blaming her fear of scorpions and her imagination. In the morning, we teased her about her dream. Yet the unease never left her or us. Not long after, my daughter began behaving oddly. She would crawl between the gaps in the sofas and whisper as if speaking to another child. She would pretend to serve tea, offer food, and giggle at responses only she could hear. At first, my mother brushed it off as harmless childhood play. But things escalated when, one evening, she pointed toward the water tank's wall and said, "Look, my friend is walking there." My sister, who was carrying her, looked, but saw nothing. My daughter insisted, describing a small, black figure wearing a white diaper, crawling along the vertical wall like Spider-Man. She giggled and waved, saying, "He's calling me to play with him." That was the first time real dread settled over us. It didn't stop. My daughter began claiming her friend visited her inside the rooms, playing games with her when no one else was around. We tried to ignore it, but each night brought new horrors. One of my sisters woke up screaming after seeing an old woman sitting near the curtains, her skin bluish, her hair long and white, reaching down like a veil, her nose crooked, and her nails impossibly long. When their eyes met, the woman only smiled before vanishing. Another time, we consulted a neighbor's uncle who was said to have knowledge of such things. He asked for a white plate and brought in a small child, saying only children could sometimes see what adults could not. The boy looked into the plate and said, "I see witches with long nails and sharp teeth. They're trying to grab something." From that day, the fear became real for everyone. Our brothers too had encounters. While riding home late at night, one saw 2 men in white clothes talking in the bushes. Thinking they might be robbers, he avoided them. Later, when he returned with another brother and shined a torch where they had been, there was nothing but dense thorny bushes, so thick not even a rat could pass through. On another night, my husband saw 4 tall figures ahead of him on the road, dressed in flowing robes. Relieved to have company, he tried to catch up, but no matter how fast he walked, the distance between them never changed. Then he realized, with a sickening jolt, that their feet weren't touching the ground. They were gliding above it. He fell sick with fever the moment he reached home. Stranger still, my brave brother began hearing our mother's voice at night, calling him by name, urging him to come to her. When he went to check, she would be sound asleep. This continued for nights, until the whole family began to hear the voice. Sometimes, we saw our father walking into the bathroom, only to discover the water tap running but the room completely empty. Sometimes, my daughter would wake and point toward the sofa, where she saw the same old woman sitting, beckoning her with a long finger to come closer. And with every passing night, the atmosphere inside the house grew heavier, darker.